It goes science. Yes, science is amazing. But not to me though, cause I am sick of waiting. I've been patient, I really have, I've been reasonable. Now it's time to say what I needed to. Dear science. Cheers for the iPods, white goods, yeah, thank you for
yes. Tomorrow's Science News Today. Yes, with Tech Talk. And Matt Dickerson with us once again. G'day, Matt. How you going?
I do like the permanent intro you've got set up for us now, Nick. Well done.
That's the clean version of Dear Science by Seth Sentry, the Aussie rapper.
And no brackets in that title, I hope?
No brackets, just Dear Science. Love it. Right, mate. Now, I've said often that Australia basically runs on trucks. We're not very good at trains in Australia, but the only reason we can get to eat things or get our toilet paper is because of the trucks, and they're all diesel. And yet this is a terribly carbon-heavy fuel, and there's a way that Australians are developing to make diesel engines run on hydrogen.
And we are leading the pack at the moment, Nick, but as with so many things, there's a big race on around the world because there's some severe dollars at the end of the chain for all of this. And I think the other thing, before I talk about the technology, is that not just the transport sector, which is obviously a big user of diesel, but the mining sector. And
of course, yeah.
The big issue here is the replacement. So if you talk about some of those mining vehicles, some of those can be millions of dollars, and you say to a mining company, you just need to replace those with hydrogen vehicles or electric vehicles, and there's some severe costs there. Transport, obviously, there's some significant costs in those trucks as well. But at the University of New South Wales, they've been working on, and they've got a test rig that's running as we speak in the laboratory, not in the real world yet, a hybrid where they're using an existing diesel engine, making some modifications to it, and then they're doing a mix of about 85 to 90% hydrogen and still some diesel, but 10 to 15% diesel. So it would immediately cut out about 90% of those emissions by using hydrogen in this rather than using all diesel. So the excitement there is that you would take those transport trucks, those mining vehicles, make a modification. So you're not replacing the whole vehicle, you're just making a modification. Need to add some hydrogen tanks as well. Obviously, you've got to store the hydrogen. Doing those two modifications to the engine and storage, suddenly you've got a vehicle that just removed about 90% of the emissions coming out of it. So that's pretty exciting. Obviously, you need to make sure you're producing the hydrogen in some sort of green way as well. It's no good if you're burning coal to produce power to convert the hydrogen, but that's obviously being worked on in Australia and around the nation as well, producing green hydrogen. But that sounds pretty exciting, and hopefully, if the University of New South Wales can continue down this path, get to the stage where they can develop it commercially, there's obviously some big dollars going back into the university field in this nation.
But we've got diesel fuel, liquid, hydrogen, a gas. We know we've got to store them both separately. So how do these two things get into the combustion chamber together? And
as happens with diesel or petrol engines, by the time that liquid gets into the combustion chamber, it is atomised. It's a mist that goes in there to burn. So that's the real secret, the part that the University of New South Wales don't like to talk about too much, but getting that mix and getting it at the right point, at the right temperature, at the right mist levels, because when it is injected into the combustion chamber, then obviously it's got to convert all of that liquid of the diesel, for example, that hydrogen that might be stored as a gas, and get that into that gaseous form in the combustion chamber. That's where they're spending all their time getting that
that's
right.
The real breakthrough, is to do that, is to mix these two things.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Why
getting
do they
that fuel
need
mix.
any diesel at all, I wonder?
Well, and that's the thing that I'm
15%?
intrigued by as well, that the fact that they still need some diesel. Now, the only thing I could think of is, of course, a diesel engine doesn't have spark plugs, so you need some way of that combustion starting. So whether it still needs the diesel to actually ignite when it's under that high pressure,
right.
And I don't know the answer, I'm speculating there, Nick, but that was the only thing I could think of, because I thought if they can get to 90%, why don't they just get to 100%? That'd be much better, wouldn't it? But maybe that's the reason they still need that to start it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because of the way diesel works, there's no spark plug. It just compresses the air until it's super hot, and then they inject the fuel into it.
That's right, and that diesel
that's why it
ignites.
makes a different sound. Yeah.
Yeah, that diesel ignites when it's under that high compression.
But hey, 15% is better than 100% diesel. That's great.
And that's the point.
We
that's
can keep
exactly
our
right.
existing trucks on the road longer. or or does it get superseded by electric vehicles as they get cheaper, or is this a transition? Who knows? But
Yeah.
it sounds like there's a lot of money in it, particularly in heavy industry.
Correct. And one of the things that I see is that EVs certainly will be the way for light vehicles, for you and I driving to work, for example. But some of the heavy transport vehicles that are travelling long kilometres and need quick refuel times, I think they'll eventually go to hydrogen rather than electric. Because again, that makes more sense. If I'm going to drive across the Nullarbor, I need to be able to refuel easily and quickly, and I need to be able to go long distances. The bottom line is that hydrogen has a higher energy density than batteries, for example. So probably 4 to 5 times the energy density of batteries. So you can store that easier to go longer distances. So hydrogen will be used for these vehicles, but again, it's all about what's out there in the market at the moment and trying to make those more compatible with our world going forward.
All right, let's move on to the story of the moment when it comes to tech, really, which is ChatGPT. We've done a few stories on this, particularly in education, but there are companies that are using it, such as lawyers. Can you explain how a lawyer might use that to do their work?
And there are some companies that are saying, I understand the education debate, there are some companies out there who are saying, let it be embraced by universities and schools, because when these students come out into the real world, then the real world is using ChatGPT. And so, for example, one law firm said that when people come into their law firm with some initial ideas and just to get that initial advice, we're not developing the full case, we're not standing in a courtroom, just some initial advice about should I pursue this, should I go down this path or not, they said they've got a choice. They can give that to a junior lawyer who can give them a bit of information that they can give to the client, but then a senior, more experienced lawyer will look over that. Or they can actually feed that information into a tool like ChatGPT and get the advice back in seconds, knowing that the grammar's going to be right, the spelling's going to be right, and they just need to have a quick check over it to make sure it's still going down the right path, and then give that to the client. So again, an experienced lawyer will still need to check it, but that initial process can be done so much quicker, so much easier, and at less cost to the legal firm rather than that full-blown cost of having a junior lawyer look at all of that. So that's where they're starting to use it in law firms already, maybe even getting to the point where you're writing a case summary. So when you're getting to the end of a case and you've got all this information there, a summary of what's happened there with all the information that's out there on the internet and the information you've got in that case, a case summary, again, a junior lawyer might be given that job, or give it to ChatGPT and see what they come up with.
Matt, you never cease to amaze me. Thank you very much for having a chat to us as always, and we'll do it again next week.
Sounds great, Nick. Thank you.
All the best in tech and all the new stuff with Matt Dickerson from Tech Talk. And you can listen to his podcast every week.